What's up, guys? It is Sneaky here, and today we're doing a dedicated server tutorial for Arma Reforger. Before we get into that, let's do the YouTube housekeeping. If this video helps you, go ahead and make sure you leave a rating. It helps spread the video out to new people and helps the channel, obviously. You can leave a comment, just say hello, or suggestions, feedback, or maybe provide additional information for other users. That gives me a nice little dopamine hit. And if you see someone having trouble setting up a server or they're looking for information on how to do it, feel free to share this video if you feel like it might help them as well. Into the kind of prerequisites portion of this video, I'm going to show you how to set up a dedicated server. You can do this on your local PC, or you can do this on maybe a PC at your hosting provider or a server you have in your basement. It'll all work the same fashion. This is for Windows, but one thing you need to do on your own that I'm not going to show you is port forwarding. If you're new to port forwarding, you can just go to portforward.com. You can type in, like, I have an ASUS router, so I just type in ASUS and hit search, and then find whichever router you have. You might have to look in your shopping history on Amazon, Walmart, whatever, to help figure that out. And then you just click on whichever router you have, and you would go down and, if I had this router, I would follow these instructions to port forward. So you'll have to do that on your own and troubleshooting on your own. Unfortunately, there's too many routers, too many situations for networks for me to go through all the scenarios on how to get your ports open. So I'm sorry, but you're gonna have to do a little bit there without the walkthrough. All right. So let's get into setting this up. All right. So the first thing we're gonna do is set up a folder on our desktop. We're gonna call this Reforger server. If you're not going to follow along with my naming conventions, that's perfectly fine, but you'll have to try and keep track of where we make changes related to the name of our folder here. I'm going to double click to go inside of the folder, and we're going to create another folder called Steam CMD. There's a link in the description for the download I'm about to reference. So it's going to be called Steam CMD download. Click the link. It will give you a zip file in your downloads folder. You can just right click and hit extract here and drag the Steam CMD.exe into your Steam CMD folder. Once it is in there, we're going to create a couple script files. It's going to make things a little bit easier. Before we do, though, I need you to enable something in your File Explorer. Click on View, and on the top right here, File Name Extensions. Make sure this is checked. It is going to be crucial to making things a lot easier for you when we create these different types or different file types. The first file is a script, and this is a Steam CMD script. It's going to download all the server files that we need for Arma Reforger. So click on, right click in here and hit New Text Document, and we're going to highlight all the text in here, including the .txt. We're going to rename it to fetch.bat. There's going to be a pop-up every time we do this, and we're just going to hit yes. I do want to give credit to steamlists.com. They had a kind of simple tutorial up here, and I found this script. I was doing it a different way, and I found the script, and it does make the process easier. So that's the script we're using for this. It's included in the paste bin linked in the description. So in the description, click on the paste bin link. And at the very top, we're going to highlight from line 3 to 4, that first section of script without the hyphens in it. We'll copy that, and we're going to right click on fetch.bat and hit edit and paste this in here. You're going to have to make a couple adjustments in here. Primarily the username, you're going to want to change to whatever your username is. Mine is Cal. And if you did not name your server folder Reforger server, there are 2 locations in here you would want to make an update to that as well. Otherwise, this won't function correctly. If you're not sure what to put in here for this path, you can always click in the address bar here, and it'll give you the path with your name, your username, to the location. So if you can use this to reference if you're having trouble figuring that out. We'll close out of that after saving. And we're going to double click on fetch.bat. This is going to download some stuff into the Steam CMD folder. Additionally, in the main Reforger server folder, it's going to download all the relevant and required server files that we need. So it's going to take a second here. we're just going to go ahead and wait through and let this all get downloaded. Okay, all of our files are downloaded in here. You can see some new stuff populating in our Reforger server folder. The next thing we're going to do is create our batch file to start the server. So right click, new, text document, highlight everything and we're going to name this start.bat. You can name this something else if you'd like. Pop up, hit yes. All right, so right click and edit. And we're going to go back to our paste bin, and from line 9 to line 10, we're going to copy all this information and paste it in here. Once again, we're going to have to make some adjustments, primarily your username. And if you name the folder something else other than a Reforger server, you're going to have to make another change. There are 3 locations to do this, so keep that in mind. Briefly, I'll go over these launch parameters here. We have max FPS 60. You can set this between 60 and 120. Just a note, you should use this parameter because otherwise your server is going to use the maximum amount of resources it can pull. So this helps restrict it when you limit the FPS. We're going to specify a config file. So in our main server folder here, we're going to create a server.json file. If you name your .json file something else, you also want to make sure you change it right now in the startup parameter. And then finally, the profile. This is where your logs are going to be saved. So if you want to make an adjustment to that, this would be the place to do it. Go ahead and save, and we can close out of this. And we're going to create one more file, and this is kind of just like a small quality of life file script. So we're going to replace all the text and we're going to call this list scenarios.bat and hit yes. And this is also on the paste bin line 15. You can just copy that. And this just lists the available scenarios, and it makes it easier for us to make changes to our config file. We can list all the scenarios that are available to us. So we'll go ahead and put this in here and hit save. And this is just a lazy thing. Instead of having to type this out all the time, just make a little .bat file for it. And finally, we're going to go ahead and make our server.json file. So replace all the text, server.json. And like I said, if you name this different than in your start.bat script, make sure you change the name. By default, I have it set as server.json. I'm going to edit this in VS Code. You can edit this in any text editor. You have to be very careful with JSON though, because if you add a comma in the wrong space or a quotation in the wrong space, you're going to mess up the file. So open it where you want to, but keep that in mind. And the last thing on our paste bin is going to go in here. It's from line 20 down to line 46. We're going to copy all this and we're going to paste it in here. So this file here is our config file. This is where we're going to specify our mission, set up our IP, and any mods and dependencies that we need to. All right, so I'm briefly going to go over how to set up this server.json and what each of these areas mean. But if you want more details, you can go to the description. There's a link to the server hosting Bohemia wiki. So the first thing is dedicated server ID. This relates to people who have favorited your server. If you have a config problem or if you migrate hosts and you didn't save the generated ID, people would lose your server from their favorites. So it's going to be blank, but once you initialize your server and start it, this will populate with an ID. The region I have is US. All right, game host bind address is for your IPv4. You can go into command prompt and you would just type that in the search bar, CMD or command prompt, and you would type ipconfig. And you see IPv4 address, and that's the numbers that you want to put over here. So I'm going to type bind in 192.168.50.55. Yours is likely going to be different. For game host register bind address, you want this to be your public IP. I'm going to just use my local one since I'm just connecting it from here and I don't want to expose my public one. But what you want to do is go into Google and type, what is my IP? It'll give you your public IP address, and that's what you want to put into this line 6 in the quotations. Admin password, this is what you want to use to log into Game Master, for example. I'm going to use pass123, but make sure yours is more secure. Server name, We're going to name this Sneaky Tutorial, or I guess Sneaky Server Tutorial. Scenario ID we'll skip for now. And the only other thing we're going to change for now is the password. This is the password to join the server. When someone double clicks on your server in the browser, they'll need to know this password to join. So I'm also going to name this pass123. Once again, make sure yours is more secure than that. We're good to go here. We're going to go back into our server and we're ready to hit start.bat. We're leaving the default tutorial here just as a example to make sure our server functions correctly. And then in the next chapter, we're going to go over setting up your custom mission on the server and getting that all set up and configured. So for now, let's hit start.bat, and this will load the tutorial mission that's already included in the base game on your server. We'll connect to make sure we can connect to the server, and then we'll back out and take the next steps. Okay, we see SCR base game mode on game state changed, which means we're good to go. We're going to go ahead and open Arma Reforger. All right, we're going to go to multiplayer, and I believe I named this Sneaky Tutorial or Sneaky Server Tutorial. Yeah, there we go, Sneaky Server Tutorial, and the scenario is tutorial. We'll go ahead and load, enter our password, and everything looks good, but we'll go in just to make sure. Okay, we are in the game. We're good to go. Looking good here. Server's running, and we're going to go ahead and back out of this. Now, before we proceed to do the custom missions, I just want to touch on a few things in case people are having problems at this stage. So if you're sitting at this stage and maybe you double clicked on the start.bat and this window popped up and then it just closed immediately, and it just keeps doing that, you can go into wherever you put your dash profile in the start.bat. So if you left it by default, you should see a folder called saved. And inside of there, you have the console.log. And you can scroll down and you'll probably see like game destroyed. And usually above it, somewhere close, you'll see where there was a problem. So common problems are error in dsconfig, or maybe it'll say couldn't find it at the specified IP address. Maybe you have the wrong IP address set up. So like right here, you'd see RP address listen requested. There might be an issue, and on the next line, it would say like couldn't connect. So if you had the wrong numbers here, you'd want to double check those. dsconfig error means your server.json is not correct. So you can copy all of this and go online. I use jsonformatter.org, and you could paste it in here and you can hit validate. And in the top right, it'll tell you if it's valid or not. So if it's not valid, that means you might have messed up a comma or something along the lines here. So you'll want to double check through that. And just as a side note, you can see it did generate our server ID here. So we would want to save this and keep this, because anyone who favorites our server would be tied to this ID. If we lost this ID, and launched our server again and it had a new one, no one would have our server favorited anymore. So keep that in mind. And the last thing is port forwarding. There might be an issue with your ports. And like I said, that's something, unfortunately, you're going to have to Google and troubleshoot to get that functioning. So we're going to take the next step here and look at how to set up your custom scenario on your server. So this is assuming that you know how to publish your scenario to the workshop already. So I'm going to go to the workshop. I already have a scenario that I've uploaded here, and you can see it's called example scenario. Now, if you haven't made your own mission and you want to just use this, you're more than welcome to. This is just a sample, a very short, quick sample for the video, for this video's purposes. So you can go ahead and search for this. I will make a note that it is a test mod, so you would have to enable, if you're in the workshop, you would have to scroll down and enable test mods, and then you can just search example, and you can see example scenario. So you can go ahead and download this or use your own, upload it, and then once it's uploaded to the workshop, make sure you download it and it's in your downloaded section. So ours is here, which means we're good to go for our next steps. I'm going to go ahead and exit this game and close out of our extra windows here and minimize our Steam, clean up our workspace a little bit. So where we're going to be working here is in our server.json, and you're also going to want to navigate to your add-ons folder. So it is in your documents, my games, Arma Reforger add-ons. And what we want to do is find our mod. So in this case, example scenario is the one I'm looking for. But if you have your own custom scenario uploaded to the workshop, you want to look through here and find it. So I'm going to go through and I have it right here. I renamed my .g project to example scenario. And if you didn't, if yours is addon.gproj, you can look at some of the other files, like the .pack files will be named based on what your scenario name is. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the gproj. I'll right click and I'm going to edit with Notepad. You can open it with anything, just some text editor to see. We want the GUID here. So I'm double click on it and copy. So now that I have my GUID, I am going to go into the mods on line 24, click between the brackets and hit enter. 2 curly braces in here. If you create one, if you're using VS Code, it should create the other. If not, just manually add 2 curly braces, opening and a closing one. And in the middle, we're going to go ahead and do quotations, mod ID, colon, space, quotations, and we're going to put our mod ID in here. So if you need to pause the video to double check to make sure you have this set up correctly, go ahead. We're going to do a comma, and on the next line, we're going to do name. And this isn't very important for the server. This is just for, our readability to know what this is. And I'm just going to do Sneaky Server Tutorial. So I know what, when I'm looking at, if I had 10 mods in here, I'd want to quickly see what each mod is. So that's why I'm doing this. We're going to go back to our, where is it? Oh, there it is. We're going to go back to our server folder. And in here, we're going to click our list scenarios.bat file. Now, once this loads up, we're going to hit Control C. And you can see in our workshop scenarios, we have example scenario right here. So my config file is right here for my example scenario. I'm going to highlight all of it and hit Control C. And then we can just close out of this. And we're going to go up to our scenario ID, and that's where we're going to paste this within the quotations here. So double, triple check. I'm going to rename this, actually do example scenario. That matches better. So double check all your stuff here. And like I said, if you need to, you can copy all of this, go into the browser, paste it in here, and hit validate just to make sure your JSON's still valid. That's going to save you a lot of problems if you just check it now before trying to jump into the server again. So what's going to happen here is we're telling the game, look, this is the workshop mod that we want you to download. And in that mod, this specific mission file, this specific config is what I want you to download. So once we hit start.bat, it's going to take an extra second because now it's going to go find this workshop mod and it's going to go ahead and download it for us. And then it's going to try and start the server with that mission we specified. All right, we have base game mode on game state changed. Looks like we're good to go here. And we're going to go ahead and hit play on Arma Reforger and load in and look for our server. Okay, we're going to go ahead into multiplayer. And we're going to search Sneaky Server and Sneaky Server Tutorial. And you can see our example scenario is the one loaded onto the server. And our ping is not looking good, but that's all right. We're not worried about it for now. We'll enter our password, pass123. Enter your specified password. Hopefully it's a little more secure than what I put in here. And we're going to give it a second to load. Look at that. Oh, sample scenario for dedicated server tutorial. Like I said, if you don't have your own scenario currently, maybe you're in the middle of it, not ready to upload it, by all means, use this example one and it should be able to work. It should be able to function just the same as I've done here. So you can see I have loaded into the game here. We've got our loadout and I did spawn 2 enemies over here in case you're having trouble with this tutorial and you need to take some stress out. Yeah, you got the other one here. Boom. Boom. You got a beautiful view. I wanted to pick a nice spot for you guys. You deserve it. You've been working hard out here trying to learn this Infusion workbench. All right. Now, look, that's all I got for this video here. like I said, port forwarding, make sure you guys look online, troubleshoot that stuff. If you're having problems, look into the saved folder where it shows your error logs. And just in case you don't know what I'm talking about, let me back out here. All right, so if you're having problems, go into the saved folder, check your error logs here. It'll show any errors. And, if you have any other issues, go ahead and leave a comment, but this should encompass everything. Um, there might be problems where you have your custom scenario and for some reason you can't load in, but you followed every step perfectly. That might indicate that there's a problem with your scenario. So I would recommend creating a new one from scratch or using my example scenario to see if you can get it to work, because that would help actually eliminate certain problems. So if your scenario doesn't work and you use the example scenario and mine works, then obviously it's a problem with your scenario. If you can't get mine to work either, then maybe there's something wrong in the process of your scripts or your server.json file. And I would recommend either rewatching the video or trying to go through and double check and match that your files are set up correctly here. And finally, if you guys thought this video was helpful, don't forget to leave a rating and a comment for that nice little dopamine hit and to help spread the video so other people can see it and stop by the channel, etc., etc. The YouTube stuff. Come on, and obviously subscribe because we got some cool stuff coming up.